Good evening, girls. Tonight we're going to begin our study of the first Native Americans. Rather than try and cover all or most of the tribal people in our country, I will try to discuss them based on the areas in which they live. If you recall from CNN, immigration is a hot topic in our country today. Therefore, this seems to be a good time to take a look at the only people who have not come to our country as either immigrants or enslaved people. Please enjoy the first short film I'm sharing before we spend time on our discussion of Native Americans. Please note the differences in the appearances of the different Native people as they share their Ten Commandments. Make sure you fill in the blanks on our discussion sheets as we watch and review. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the Native American Ten Commandments. We will use them for the basis of a project in class. Let's take a look at the lesson, starting with the main idea. First, many Native people lived in America long before Europeans explored the continent. Secondly, geographic areas influence Native American culture. And last, cultures grew based on environmental influences including climate and natural resources. The first group of Native Americans that we will take a look at are the Hohokam people. They are one of the two oldest native tribes that we are aware of. The dry, hot desert of Arizona was home to these tribes. They learned to squeeze every ounce of water from their environments in order to irrigate their fields. With hundreds of miles of irrigation, they were successful making pottery, stone figures, cliff dwellings, and even artifacts from other tribes that they traded with before they just simply disappeared. We remain at a loss to discover what happened to this early tribe. As you can see, we do have archaeological sites from the Hohokam people. The next tribe we will study is the Anasazi people. They lived at about the same time as the Hohokam people. The name Anasazi means ancient ones. Farming changed people's lives. For the first time, people could live in one place. They learned to live and work together. People no longer needed to spend all their time looking for food. They grew more food than they needed. We know that beans and corn and squash were staples of their diet. They saved grain to eat later. People had time to make pottery, baskets, and play games. They built these incredible adobe homes from clay. Most villages also contained a kiva, used for special spiritual meetings and stargazing. The Anasazi lived in the area we call the Four Corners, located where the state of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico are joined. Many cave drawings document that Anasazis loved the study of the stars. What happened to these tribes? Drought, absorption into other tribes, or aliens? Yes, look at these cave drawings and see if you agree. Even though your textbook skips all over our country when talking about native groups, I think it's more logical to continue discussing tribes from the same general area of our country. With that in mind, we will now discuss the people of the North and Northwest. The people of the North, also known as the Arctic Native Group, or the Arctic Native culture, is made up of two native groups, the Inuit and the Aleut. The Aleut lived in northern and western Alaska. They are people who depended on hunting and fishing for survival and used dog sleds for transportation. The Aleut people also have a sad history of treatment. During World War II, the U.S. Department of the Army forced the Aleuts into internment camps where many died. The Army burned their homes in order to clear the land for a military base. The Aleuts lived 12 people to a 10 by 10 foot dirt room without bathrooms for much of their time being held by the government. After 3 years, the Aleuts were allowed to return to their homes, finding them vandalized and destroyed. In 1988, the government voted to pay each Aleut who was still alive $12,000 for their losses. The government also apologized for the treatment of these native people. The Inuit lived further north and survived in houses made of ice, known as Eskimos in earlier times. This native group survived by eating seals, walrus, polar bears, and other animals of the far north. The next group we will discuss are the subarctic native groups. The environment and climate is milder. They lived in the Pacific Northwest. They lived on fish and game that they followed. And they did very little farming. The environment and climate is much milder in the Pacific Northwest. Therefore, Native Americans have adapted their lifestyles to this area. People live on fish, especially salmon, and game from the plentiful streams and the Pacific Ocean. Crops were not plentiful, but berries and fruit were important to their diet. These Native Americans lived in longhouses communally with others. These people are known for their totem poles. If you have been to our zoo's Northwest Passage, you have taken a trip into the world of subarctic people of the North. Totem poles are spiritual carvings that tell families or even the stories of people's lives. They also celebrate animals who protect the family or the individual. Made from wood, a few survive, but most early totems disappeared from weather or decay. The next group we will study are from the West Coast region. The coastal group we will take a look at are considered the California regional tribes. We will also look at the groups between the Sierra Nevada mountains and the Rocky Mountains, which is called the Great Basin. The California region is a region where people were frequently called Digger Indians because they ate slugs and worms and other creepy crawlies. People fished and hunted, dug up slugs and worms, and berries and acorns were a main part of their diet. The climate in this region was plentiful with berries, fruits, and plants, as I said. These tribes were peaceful people who lived in harmony with new groups as they entered native lands. The main food these Native Americans used were acorns. If you live in California like I did for 25 years, you will frequently see the grinding stones in mountains where women ground their acorns to make flour. Another interesting thing about acorn use is that acorns are poison in their natural state. After women boil the acorns, they could be used for making flour for bread. These tribes did not have pottery. How do you think they boiled acorns? By using their intricate baskets filled with hot stones to heat the water to boiling and then putting the acorns into the boiling water. Pretty smart, resourceful women, wouldn't you say? Now we will look at the Southwest culture. We've already learned about the Hohokam and the Anasazi tribes. which were tribes from this same general area. The natives of the Southwest are desert people who survived by using their environment. You can see from the slide that they irrigated the desert land to grow crops. They made incredible pottery, and they tended sheep and made wonderful woven goods like blankets. Unable to grow crops, native tribes tended sheep and learned to weave cloth for trade with others. The Zuni and the Hopi tribe lived in pueblos or villages also. The Zuni were successful at farming and irrigation. They grew wheat and hay and maize. Zuni and Hopi pottery is some of the best native pottery and baskets ever produced. Many sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars today. The other tribe that is most representative of the Southwest people is the Apache tribe. They were a nomadic people who frequently moved. They are most known as a warrior people who pillaged other villages, killing and taking whatever they needed. As you can see, many Native Americans lived in this land before the arrival of the European immigrants. We will study the natives of the plains, the northeast, and the southeast in our next study together. Take care. That wasn't perfect.